Great. Our next speaker is bringing innovative solutions and thinking to U.S. development assistance since he took over his current role the week of the Haiti earthquake. Whether restarting the daunting task of helping Haiti rebuild or tackling global food security issues, he has worked to modernize development assistance by using creative ideas from organizations like his previous employer, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Additionally, he has opened up the work of USAID and connected those trying to help to those needing assistance. One look at USAID's website and its use of social media can show you this and let you know just what he's doing to try and change the face of U.S. development assistance. In conversation with Mashable's Sarah Kessler, please welcome to the Social Good Summit stage USAID Administrator Raj Shah.
So I understand that USAID has taken a particular focus on the crisis in the Horn of Africa, and that you've recently returned from a trip in the region there. So I was hoping you could start by kind of telling us a little bit about that issue.
Well, thanks for asking. You know, I just had a chance to return from a place called Dadaab, which is a refugee camp on the border between Somalia and Kenya. And it's a pretty amazing experience to have the opportunity to go there and to meet people who have left their communities in Somalia because of a famine, because of war-torn environment, and because of a drought, all coming together to essentially deprive them of their access to food, water, shelter. And families walk for 20, 30 days, 80, 100 kilometers. I met a woman in line waiting to come into the camp who had carried her 2 children there, but you know, her children were very, very weak, and she just wanted them to survive. The photograph you're looking at is a good example of the both suffering and opportunity that exists right now in this moment to save lives and to do something special. This is a picture of a woman taking care of her son, and her son is too malnourished to take food directly into his mouth the way we all eat. So he's being fed through what we call a nasogastric tube, a tube that goes in his nose, so he can get some basic energy back and be able to start taking food. And when I met him and when I met his mother, it took me a moment to fully appreciate that just that morning they had lost his younger brother, who's on the cot wrapped up there. And it's really tragic to see this happening. And we right now are at the cusp of a huge wave of deaths in the Horn of Africa. Some estimate, the UN estimates, that 750,000 people are at the risk of dying. And my message today is that it doesn't have to be this way, that we can do something about it, that the United States can respond, and that the American people and its institutions can respond.
And so when you're looking at such a large and complex issue like this in hunger, how do you make even a small impact on such a large and complex issue?
Well, we've seen a lot of efforts that have actually made a big difference. President Obama a few years ago launched a program called Feed the Future, and that effort has helped to invest in agriculture and farming in the Horn of Africa, in Kenya and Ethiopia. And so that today, even though we're experiencing the worst drought that we've experienced in that part of the world in more than 6 decades, we know that. That's just a fact. The number of people who are suffering from the kind of acute circumstances that you're seeing in the photo are really more limited to inside Somalia. And in Kenya and Ethiopia, there are millions of people that we're supporting to stay in their communities, to continue to depend on their business, which is usually livestock or farming. We've seen some real success stories, like a tripling of food production in Western Kenya that has really helped protect millions of people from being in a similar plight. And so we want to keep making those investments. We want to work with partners like companies in the United States and around the world that have the technology and the know-how to modernize food systems and bring their capacity to these places so that they can have real impact.
And so when you're painting this picture about millions of people who are suffering or potentially suffering, I wonder why have we not heard more about this, and why is it something that we're not as aware of as maybe some other crises?
I don't have a good answer for that. I know there are hundreds of thousands of people watching through all kinds of social media, and I think your voice matters. And if you use your voice, and if you share the facts, and if you tell the stories, I think more people will pay attention. And the story to tell is not just one of despair and suffering. It is also a story of success. In the photograph you're looking at now, that's Dr. Jill Biden, whom I joined on this trip to Dadaab and to Kenya. And the same day that we met those suffering children at the border, at the Somali border, we also had a chance to visit an institution called the Kenyan Agricultural Research Institute. And we met African scientists who benefited from USAID support, who were creating new sweet potatoes and new forms of corn and maize and new forms of cassava, and helping to work with thousands and thousands of farmers, most of whom are women, and most of whom farm very small plots of land, helping them literally double or triple their food production, feed their families, and help their children grow up well-nourished instead of malnourished. So, the solutions are out there, and if we as a country can muster the political will and the commitment and the awareness of those solutions, I think that a much better story can be told.
And you mentioned that USAID is kind of taking a new approach in telling that story. Could you tell us more about that?
Well, we're trying to. We know that for decades, we've all sat and watched as tragedies have happened, especially in the area of Africa with these famines and with the droughts. Today, I'm very excited to launch a new effort to engage the American people and our great companies and institutions to be more active participants in contributing to a short-term and a long-term response. Our effort is called the Forward Campaign, and FWD standing for Famine, War, and Drought. And the point is to highlight that we can do something about it. The campaign is supported with the generous and really great vision of our colleagues at the Ad Council, and I want to thank the Ad Council for being here and for participating.
Great. Can you tell me more details about how you're approaching it?
Sure. Well, first you can go to our website at www.usaid.gov/FWD. And we've launched a new site today to help do a few things with the campaign. First, we want to provide information. And so the screenshot you're looking at represents one of the pictures of the campaign. If you click on crisis, you'll see what's happening. We're not going to go through all the maps right now, but you'll see a map like this that highlights exactly where people are suffering from a great deal of food insecurity and exactly where there are populations that are in real crisis. You can click on the buttons and it'll pop up even more information about how many people are in that particular place and how many people are suffering and why. We'll have other maps on there that actually demonstrate what it looks like in a year with normal rainfall and what it looks like this year, which has been the worst drought in 6 decades. And just by looking at that and mapping it against where populations are in real crisis, you'll get a much better sense of what the actual problem is and what we're then trying to solve.
And why, for this particular case, did you feel that this would be a good tool for an awareness campaign?
Well, because, the American government, the U.S. government under President Obama's leadership has really done a lot to support this response already. But we recognize that governments really can't tackle these problems alone. It is the ingenuity and the interest and the scientific insights and the innovative ideas that exist throughout this country on college campuses and in your dorm rooms and in other venues at startup and entrepreneurial companies that actually have many of the solutions to these types of challenges. And so we wanted to say, look, we've spent more than $600 million already over the course of the last year. In fact, years ago, we built something called a famine early warning system that allows us to predict when there are going to be these types of famines. And as a result, over the course of the past year, we've helped millions of people in the Horn of Africa protect their livestock, gain access to water in their communities, shore up their food stocks and have enough food in their local markets to try to limit the tragic consequences of what's happening. But to really solve the problem, we need more of you to be engaged. We need your ideas, we need your voice, we need your activism. We need you to make this visible because, more than 12 million people are in a position of being really threatened. And over the course of the next 4 or 5 months, more than 750,000 people are literally, at the verge of potential death. And what people don't realize about famines and droughts and these types of challenges is that often the most serious consequences happen when we think the problems are solved. When it starts to rain, the first thing that's going to happen is kids are going to start to get waterborne diseases like cholera or rotavirus. Probably everybody in this room has had rotavirus at one point in their life, and you may or may not have even noticed it or been uncomfortable because of it. But when this happens in a context where 50, 60, 70% of the kids have been acutely malnourished for 4, 5, 6, 7 months, that will kill those kids. And so we need to come up with solutions and engage in a more effective way, and that's what the campaign is all about.
And the idea of kind of opening up the data and letting people explore it on their own, is that something that USAID is considering kind of an experiment, or do you see that type of open data and interactive map playing a role in future campaigns?
Well, some elements of the campaign are important but have been done before. Things like asking people to text 777-444 and write in the word give. If you do that, you'll be making a $10 contribution to a coalition of partners that have come together to, essentially spend those resources in a way that saves the most lives. That's been done before, and that we're doing through this campaign, and it's very, very important. And I hope, frankly, each of you right now are looking down at your phones and thinking about doing that or doing that. But what's really new and different about the campaign is what you're talking about with the open source data. We get a lot of information in the federal government. We actually have, just to give you one example, in a certain part of Mogadishu, we're tracking 26 different health clinics and tracking what types of diarrheal diseases are coming in so that we can have a strong and epidemiologically effective response to diseases that we know will kill children because they're so vulnerable. We're going to try to make all of that data live and accessible. We're tracking food prices in hundreds of markets throughout the Horn of Africa. And we can show you that in some parts of Kenya, prices are up 50, 60%. In some parts of Somalia, prices are up 180, 200, 250%. And I know it seems, this is a slide that shows you that. I know that seems maybe like it's not the most dramatic increase in the world, because in America, here we spend about 10 or 11% of our disposable income on food. So a little bit of a price increase is uncomfortable, but it's not tragic. For the communities we're doing work for in this campaign, they spend 60, 70, 80% of their income on food. So to have their incomes go down because the drought has wiped out their food supply and their agricultural product, and then to have prices go up 200, 300%, essentially means first mothers stop eating, then parents cut down on their intake, and then they have no other choice but to deprive their children of basic food and basic nutrition. So our hope is that by making this story and making all the data we have accessible, live, and real time, that will unlock a great deal of ingenuity and enterprise in trying to address these problems.
Great. And you've mentioned the text message gift, and is there any other ways that everyone can participate?
Yes, if you go to the website, there'll be an action tab, and you can click on the action tab, and it'll give you a lot of different options. One option will be to forward the facts, and I think that's an exciting option, because when I talk to people and when I tell them what I saw in Dadaab and what I saw at that Agricultural Research Institute, and that for pennies on the dollar we can vaccinate kids, and for a few dollars per family we can help them gain access to agricultural technologies that will transform their lives, people are willing to give and people are willing to engage. So forwarding the facts is very important. There'll also be a tab that allows you to donate to a broad range of organizations that have essentially been pre-cleared. They are partners that we tend to work with. We trust what they're doing. We're there every day with them, hand in hand, trying to solve problems and make sure that when resources are spent, they're spent efficiently. And so you'll have all of those options and more. You can even download some of the data, and you can download some of the graphics and post them on your sites or share them with others so that we can really build a movement of people who are committed to the idea that we don't have to sit here and watch the kind of suffering that is just gut-wrenching when you meet a mother who's literally had to choose which of her children she will carry on an 80-mile trek with no food and no water, just seeking basic sustenance. It's something we can do something about, and I'm really excited that there's such a great level of interest among folks here, and I'm excited that you're all going to do something, and I'm very grateful to our partners and to Peggy Conlon and others at the Ad Council that are mobilizing all these great American companies like Facebook and Google and Twitter and General Mills and Cargill and so many others to really say that we're not going to accept this anymore in 2011.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.